Welcome back to our horror podcast segment, Network, where real people call in and share their stories and paranormal encounters. Today we continue with Hannah's scary stories and paranormal encounters. You can take it away, Hannah.
Thanks. So, I'd like to tell you about my experiences as a child. I had a lot of spooky experiences. I grew up in LaBelle, Texas, on a pasture, a large cattle pasture. We didn't really know our neighbors, but a lot of weird things happened on that pasture. Um, Things would move. For example, my grandmother's feed bucket for feeding the horse. We had a horse and a bunch of cows and a goat and stuff like that. She always used the same bucket. Well, one day she calls my mom and she's yelling at my mom, "Where's my feed bucket? Did you take my feed bucket?" And my mom looked out her back, opened the back door and looked out on the porch at my grandmother's house, which is on the other side of the pasture. And she says, "Your feed bucket is on the roof of your
What?
house. See it."
Crazy.
How did it get up there?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, we don't know. Also, things as a little kid, I would stay up way too late watching Adult Swim anime on TV, way past my bedtime. So I would sneak into the living room and turn the volume down to like 3 or 4 on the TV. So it was just loud enough to hear, but wouldn't wake up mom. I was laying on the couch, and the front door is behind my head. Outside the front door are 3 wooden steps. Well, one night I was watching Inuyasha, and suddenly I heard behind my head steps. Somebody's walking up those steps. And then the steps paused, and I was like, is somebody about to come in the house? And it's past midnight. It's dark. Nobody should be out there. And after about maybe 30 seconds to a minute, I hear the steps go back down the stairs. And that was it. That freaked me out pretty bad. I thought about going and waking up mom. Mom, there's somebody outside, but then I would get in trouble for being up so late. So I just kind of kept it to myself.
When
Um,
you heard the steps, you didn't like push yourself to try and go look out the window or something to see who it was?
no, I was frozen. I just froze. I, like muted the TV and everything. And I just laid there frozen. If if it was like an actual person walking up to the door, there's a window next to me through the living room, so they would see the light from the TV from outside.
Mhm.
Even though there were curtains there, you would definitely see the light from the TV outside. So I don't know if it was like maybe a real person that was creeping around that decided to walk up onto our property, but we had 2 very large outdoor dogs that definitely would have detected anybody driving up to our property or anything. And they like to bark, but
Right.
they weren't barking.
Yeah, so that definitely wasn't a person because your dogs would have been at the front door barking if they had heard somebody go up there.
And plus, our driveway is very, very long. It's a long trek to get from the road to the house. So if somebody walked up, maybe the dogs wouldn't detect them. But if they drove a vehicle, like even right as the vehicle turns into the driveway, the dogs are going off.
Yeah.
Another experience that occurred that my mom told me about. I don't personally remember it because I was still in daycare. I was very, very young. I was sitting at my little desk in my room in coloring, and to my left was the window, to my right was my bed. And my mom heard me having a conversation with somebody. And I was saying, "Yes, sir, no, sir. This is what happened to me in daycare today. I had a good day at daycare." Yeah, what do you think? And actually having pauses and responses during this conversation with nobody. And my mom lingered outside my bedroom door and she was listening to me have this conversation with somebody. And finally, she asks me, "Who are you talking to?" And I told her, "The moon face man." And she
In the
said,
basement.
"Well, don't talk to him anymore." And I didn't.
So I know you were very little, but like seeing what, as you called him, the moon face man, I would assume his head was the shape of a moon or close to it.
Right. But
Did,
I would have remembered that.
did that, or did your mom tell you that if you acted a different way when you were speaking to this entity?
She only told me that that I was having a conversation with him and that I didn't say anything more about him after that. She didn't really pry either. I think she was pretty freaked out. But if I was speaking and seeing an entity that had like the face of the moon or whatever, I think I definitely would have remembered that because you know how child brain development and stuff like that, when they see something odd, it sticks, or something out of the ordinary, it sticks with them. So maybe the man that I saw, his face was as pale as the moon.
That's possible too. Or maybe, the face that's on the moon, maybe that's what it looked like.
No idea.
Yeah, um, do you also think that you don't remember it, but do you think it could be a suppressed childhood memory?
I have no clue. I really don't know. I don't think at the time I was scared. I mean, I was talking to him, telling him about my day, having casual conversation with him.
And yeah, that's the thing about being a kid and seeing things like that. As a child, you're so innocent that even something evil might not be evil to you because that presence isn't going to be evil to a kid because then it'll scare it and it'll want nothing to do with it. Yeah, there's instances where yeah, they do come out evil right away and the kids are scared to sleep in the room or they start seeing things, but a lot of the times they don't. They try to befriend the child and just it all goes downhill from there.
You know what? That was it. Because I know living on that property, growing up on that pasture, I suffered from chronic nightmares. I had nightmares all the time, like nightmares that I would wake up from and I would be too scared to go back to sleep because I knew that nightmare would continue.
And did the nightmares you have affect you, like in your personal life at all, or did you
Yeah,
just try to ignore them?
I did try to ignore them, but sometimes they would make me really sad. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to about them. Um, I tried to talk to my teachers about them, but teachers are very busy. They don't want to hear about a kid's dreams,
Oh
right?
no.
But yeah, for the most part, I kept them to myself. But the scariest dreams were literally about paranormal activity, like stuff just flying around by itself. Um, Cattle. I had some nightmares about our cows, like calves being suicidal and stuff like that. It wasn't until much time later that, now this is a rumor. I don't have actual evidence or history to back this up. I haven't looked into it too much, but apparently on the corner of our property was a slave graveyard. And today it's called the Lincoln Cemetery on LaBelle Road. All that graveyard was discovered all the graves were dug up and they were moved to the Lincoln Cemetery.
Yeah, and I can tell you about that. I did research on it and I didn't find much. It's almost like they're trying to hide something. They desecrated these graves, and the only thing I found just mentioned, and I'll post it on here too, that they went, dug up the graves, they left the coffins there, or whatever was left of them. They left headstones, and, so whatever happened there, or whoever they buried there, for whatever reason, and the reason for moving them, it's unclear. There's nothing on the internet showing anything about it or why it was done. I try to Google the area, and all there is now is just grass
Mm-hmm.
and the sign that says Lincoln Cemetery. So, you would think they moved all the graves and, all the bodies or the remains. Why is the sign still up there?
Well,
It just doesn't make sense.
well, apparently they moved them from the corner of the property, but I'm pretty sure it was like the corner of our property and some of our neighbors' properties too, where this
Mhm.
grave was. And then they moved them to the Lincoln Cemetery. Like they made the Lincoln Cemetery for these graves. But for so long, like right after the Lincoln Cemetery the sign was put up and there were giant concrete coffins, sort of, that were left open for the longest time. And the cemetery was just absolutely neglected. There were tons of weeds and branches and shrubbery growing up all over the place. Uh, Nobody was taking care of it. I went back recently. After being gone from the area for so long, I went back recently and got some pictures and sent them to you. Everything's been leveled, and on each side is just two giant piles of dirt.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying is, it's like nothing was there. If that sign that says Lincoln Cemetery wasn't there, you wouldn't even know. It would just be a pasture, with trees in the background, and you would have never known that there was a cemetery there.
There's also I was looking at I was looking at it on Maps, Apple Maps. It was on either on Apple Maps or Google Maps, where right next to the Lincoln Cemetery, deeper into the woods, is a location called the Broussard Cemetery. But I don't know anything about the Broussard Cemetery. I haven't seen any signage or heard anything about it.
Do you think that maybe it was the same cemetery and they just renamed it the Lincoln Cemetery?
I have no idea.
Um,
But Broussard is a prominent name in that area.
so do you think it was somebody that at that time, from what I read, I think it was the 1930s to the 1950s, it could have been a family in that area that owned a lot of land and was well known?
Well, even to this day, the Broussards are it's a very popular name. They own a lot of land and they have many businesses there too. To this day.
Okay. So yeah, that actually makes sense. And, I don't know, this is just me speculating, but, maybe it could also be a private cemetery that, they only bury family in the area. But yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And, you know, all I gotta say is if anybody knows more about this, let us know because we want to find out the truth.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for you. And thank you for having me on your show.
And thank you for taking your time to join us on Obscure Echoes YT. Your experiences are definitely terrifying. If you can, please keep us updated on any new paranormal encounters.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Hannah. You too.
Have a good one.